Hello, my name is Amy Rowe. Welcome to Personalizing in the Elementary Classroom. In this brief video, we're going to look at personalizing questions and how we can use them to increase student engagement and provide meaningful, compelling input in the target language. Personalizing questions can be meaningfully incorporated into any lesson. I use them every day in every single lesson with my students. They are a core skill of teaching with comprehensible input. They can also be an entire lesson by themselves, so they are a wonderful, no prep lesson plan. And we'll look at how to do both of those today. How to weave personalizing questions into another lesson, and how to build a lesson completely around personalizing questions. They also give students meaningful repetition with high frequency vocabulary. And they're a great way to build community because personalizing questions are all about getting to know each other. So I ask my students questions and they answer them, and I'm providing compelling input in the target language, but at the same time, I'm learning about my students and they're learning about each other. And we're building this really close community in Spanish class where we learn many things about each other. I often tell parents of students who are new to our school that Spanish class is a wonderful way for them to get to know their peers and also to share about themselves. Here is an example of incorporating personalizing questions into another activity. This activity is Picture Talk, where we begin with a picture and ask questions about it in the target language. So here we In classic TPRS, the teacher asks a story. This means that the teacher asks questions about a story, and students provide the answers to the questions. As the teacher asks questions and the students in the class answer them, those questions and answers come together to create a complete TPRS story. We also have students act out the story as the class is creating it. So I have a student who is an actor who plays the part of George. So I will have an actor playing George, and that actor will act out having a problem, wanting to have a blue cat, not having a blue cat, maybe being very sad, and then that character will act out going to each place. Place A, place B, and place C. If you have younger students, you're going to use shorter, simpler stories where the teacher is more of a narrator. So students will contribute to the story, but not quite as much as older students. So with your young students, especially if you're teaching preschool or kindergarten, the teacher is going to be more of a storyteller with students contributing a few details. The older students get, the more they can co-create the story with the teacher. One other thing I do in elementary, and I do this for all ages in elementary, is I recast characters several times to give more students a turn. So if I start out with one student playing George, I will often switch the actor after about 5 or 6 minutes. And this is because in elementary school, almost everyone wants to participate in every story. And if I cast all of the actors for the story at the beginning of class, and I don't call on a student to be an actor, that student can check out of the story. They can completely lose interest in it because they are not getting to participate and act. So if I cast a student named Thomas to play the part of George, maybe there's a student named Samuel who really wanted to play the part of George. And now Samuel's very sad. He had raised his hand. He wanted to play the part of George. And now he's so disappointed that he's not George that he might just check out of the story and not pay attention. But if Samuel knows that in a few minutes I'm going to rotate the actor playing George, that keeps him engaged and gives him the knowledge that more than one student is going to have a turn to be an actor. So for your students to remain engaged and invested in the story, it's very important to rotate actors so that more students get a turn. A comprehensible input class is kind of like a constant conversation between the teacher and the students. The teacher asks questions, students answer them, and we ask them to contribute their ideas, to make connections to the story, to co-create stories with us, and really to bring their full personalities to class. That means it's very important for us to establish boundaries, to set expectations, and to model and practice routines and procedures. So the first thing I teach my students is how to enter the classroom. And this looks a little bit different depending on whether you have your own classroom space or if you are pushing into students' homeroom class on a cart. I've done both, so I will talk briefly about how I enter the classroom in both of those scenarios. When I'm pushing into classrooms, so I've done both, I've had my own classroom space, and I've also been a push-in teacher. When I'm pushing into classrooms, I have a conversation with the classroom teacher about where I expect students to be when I come in. So maybe I prefer that kindergarten students are on the rug and maybe that fourth grade students are in their desks. So I'll talk to each teacher about where I want students to be, and then I will ask that teacher where they want the students to be at the end of class. There's always kind of a funny transition time when you're a push-in teacher where you're coming in with your cart and the classroom teacher is maybe leaving the room or sitting down at their desk to do some work, and there's this little time where you need to get unpacked and organized. So typically what I will do during that time is I will just open my computer and quickly put on a greeting song for my students. And so that might be a song on YouTube or it might be a song on iTunes, and my students will sing that song, and that takes about 2 minutes, and that gives me a chance to get everything unpacked from my cart, to get my computer hooked up to the projector, and just to kind of get myself organized. So I always have a place where I want students to be in the classroom, whether it's on the rug or in their desks or somewhere else. And then I put a greeting song on to give myself just a little bit of time to get organized and unpacked. If you're teaching older elementary students who know how to read really well and are comfortable reading in the target language, you can pass out a little reading passage or something at the beginning of class that gives you that same amount of time, just about 2 minutes to get organized and unpacked. And that, for me, helps the rest of the class to go really smoothly. And touch their toes and maybe do some yoga stretches and sit back down. Or you can have students stand up and do some TPR actions. So you can say things like jump, jump slowly, jump quickly, run, swim, fly. And then you can have students sit back down. That in and of itself can often just be enough movement to kind of reset and have students come back to the story and be focused and attentive. It's really important for teachers to be extremely watchful of what is going on in the classroom. So the moment I see one student start to wiggle or one student kind of look up at the ceiling like this, I know it's time for a break from the bigger rug where everyone is sitting. So I'll have the big rug, and then I have a smaller rug that's kind of off to the side. I also use Fix-It if a student has hurt another student's feelings. So I will pull both students aside, and I will say to the student who hurt the other student's feelings, "Wow, it looks like you really hurt her feelings. What do you think you could do to fix it?" And then I will say to the student whose feelings were hurt, "I see that your feelings were really hurt. What would fix it for you?" And so then the students will come up with something that would fix it. And then I always check back in again with that student whose feelings were hurt, and I ask them,
Did that fix it for you? And sometimes they will say yes, and sometimes they will say no, and we can come back together and work toward a solution that will fix it.